Be it in the Shawshank Redemption, Prison Break, or Chicken Run. Film and television has long made breaking out of jail look awesome. But the reality is that it's much tougher to break out of a maximum security prison than the films make it look. Not that anybody told these people who broke out of prison in ways you wouldn't think of. There's probably no prison quite as famous as Alcatraz. It's literally been referenced in The Simpsons.
No!
And if that's not the peak of iconic, we don't know what is. While there were several attempted prison breaks from Alcatraz, none are quite as legendary as the one that went down in June 1962. For those unfamiliar with Alcatraz, this maximum security federal penitentiary operated from 1934 to 1963 and was built on an island about 1.5 miles off the coast of San Francisco, California. Even if you did manage to escape, you would immediately find yourself with another problem to solve. How exactly do you cross the water and get to the mainland? It was specifically designated for housing the most problematic prisoners who continually caused trouble at other less secure federal prisons. Alcatraz had such a reputation for being inescapable, it was thought that not even Houdini himself could spring this joint. But then Frank Morris arrived. With an IQ that put him in the top 2% of the American population, he was no everyday criminal. If anyone could bust out of this place, it was him. Teaming up with fellow inmates Alan West and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, Frank Morris set his plan in motion. Behind all the cells was a foolishly unguarded 3-foot-wide utility corridor. As the months rolled by, Morris sneakily swiped as many drill bits as he could, as well as a vacuum cleaner, and using that Tony Stark-sized brain of his, fashioned it all together into an imperfect but working drill. Over the course of half a year, Morris and his friends took turns using saw blades, old spoons, and his homemade drill to slowly widen the ventilation ducts under the sinks in their cells. The major flaw in this plan, of course, was the sound of the drill. But Morris had already prepared for this. He masked the sound with strategically timed accordion playing, and their drilling progress was hidden from the guards during the day by the use of false walls. Come the night of the escape, they put papier-mâché dummies that looked like them, complete with hair, in their beds, and upon reaching the island's edge with choppy waters, they were ready to sail by using a rudimentary raft that Morris had constructed out of stolen raincoats. MacGyver, eat your heart out. The plan didn't go off without a hitch, however. Alan West's fake wall kept sliding out of place, so, to try to get it to stay up to avoid the guards noticing, he glued it in with wet cement. Come the night of the escape, the cement had permanently set, effectively turning his fake wall into a real one. It took him far too long to rip it down, and Morris and the others were not patient types. They sailed off without him, leaving poor Alan behind to tell the tale of how his former fellow inmates escaped while never getting to escape with them. What became of Morris and the others as they hit the waters? Sadly, we may never know. An investigation by the FBI concluded they never reached the shore, implying their makeshift boat fell apart and they lost their lives at sea. But there are consistent rumors the men are still alive and well to this day in Brazil. To be fair, if anyone could survive such an ordeal, it's Frank Morris. Do you think he made it or not? Tell us in the comments. While prison breaks in fiction are often romanticized and made to look awesome, not all methods are as cool as having your brother, who got the blueprints to the prison tattooed on his body, get incarcerated with you.
I'm getting you out of here. It's impossible.
Some prison breaks can be a little lacking in dignity. In 2016, the Russian inmate Rustam Shakrutinov chose to take advantage of his petite frame in order to wiggle to freedom. The 25-year-old Rustam had been arrested for robbery and was thrown in jail. Shakrutinov, nicknamed the Snake Man by Russian media, realized that he was skinny enough that he could just about squeeze his way through the food delivery hatch of his cell. The only thing standing in his way was the resistance his clothes would offer. So, stripping naked, the man clambered headfirst through the hatch, bursting out of his cell and into the corridor in a manner disturbingly reminiscent of that infamous rhino scene in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. CCTV footage reveals the baffling moment he comes uncomfortably slinking out of the hatch, only to casually get dressed as if all is normal, and saunter off down the corridor to freedom. Crazily, a similar thing once happened in an episode of The X-Files. We can't help but wonder if that's what inspired him. And as far as we can tell, was never successfully apprehended again. Of all the methods, we did not think this would be the one to work. The second most famous Yoshi after the little green dinosaur Mario rides around the Mushroom Kingdom, Yoshi Shiratori is infamously known as the man no prison could hold. This Japanese Houdini has slipped out of more cells than you've had hot dinners. There is truly no one who hates incarceration as much as he did. While early Japanese prisons were easier to break out of than a paper bag, since the mid-70s the annual number of successful escapes countrywide is down to single digits, meaning Yoshi's statistical chance of escape was slimmer than Rustam Shakrutinov's body. But he wasn't going to let that deter him. Initially arrested for murder and robbery, he was locked up in Aomori prison. But a mere 3 years later, he had picked the lock of his handcuffs and made a break for it. Later caught and put away for life in Akita prison, he managed to slip out of that prison as well by climbing up the walls every night and gradually unhinging the air vent. One night he finally wriggled through it and ran to freedom. Having escaped 2 times, Yoshi was transferred to Abashiri prison, an Alcatraz-style facility in that it is normally reserved for the worst of the worst. But no, not even this place could get the restless Shiratori to stop running. Every morning he spat miso soup on the doorframe of his cell, the salts within slowly corroding and weakening the doorframe. During the wartime blackout of August 25, 1944, Yoshi deliberately dislocated his shoulder and wriggled through the small space on the metal frame the guards would use to slide in his food. Finally having enough, the Japanese prison system decided to up their game. Yoshi was locked up in SAPPORO prison, where he was assigned 6 personal armed guards and was under surveillance 24 hours a day. Yet he still managed to escape. How? You'll have to wait till the end of the video to find that out. Yoga has become something of a hot trend in recent years, but who would have thought it could ever help someone break out of prison? No, Choi Gap-bok didn't meditate his way to freedom. This 50-year-old yoga master had been arrested for suspected robbery and put into a holding cell in South Korea. After 5 days in prison, he decided to exploit a similar method as Rustam, and after covering his entire body with lotion, used the extreme flexibility he had mastered across a lifetime of yoga to squeeze through the food slot at the bottom of his cell. He snuck past the officers on duty, who had all made the mistake of falling asleep, and slipped out a narrow window. While Rustam the Snake Man had struggled, Choi, who was only 5 foot 4 inches tall, had a food slot in his cell that was 5.9 inches tall by 17.7 inches wide, which made it far easier for him to squeeze through. Upon fleeing, Gap-bok escaped and remained on the run for 6 whole days before finally being rearrested. Joaquin Guzman, more notoriously known as El Chapo, is considered the greatest criminal ever to come out of Mexico. The multi-billionaire head of the Sinaloa cartel, Guzman is as dangerous and clever as he is loaded. After he was incarcerated, the authorities thought they finally had the legendary icon behind bars. Chapo became known in prison for his long showers, but he wasn't exactly practicing his singing in there. Chapo was providing himself to be very resourceful and used his shower time to dig a 33-foot deep hole that dropped slap bang into an underground tunnel. On July 11, 2015, the guards noticed that Guzman's shower was even longer than usual, prompting them to pop their heads in and check. They found the hole, they found the tunnel, but Guzman was nowhere to be seen. He had made a break for it. The tunnel led to a construction site where Chapo, presumably still covered in shampoo and soap, swiped a motorbike and rode to freedom. The crazy thing is, this is far from El Chapo's first prison break. Back in 2001, Guzman was incarcerated in a different prison and used his money to wrap almost every member of the staff around his little finger. swiftly becoming the king of the castle. With almost all the guards on his payroll, he was soon able to bribe a few of them into helping him slip out by hiding him in a laundry basket that was escorted to freedom by maintenance worker Javier Camberos. Poor Camberos was almost immediately locked up for the role he played, while Guzman remained at large until 2014, even getting plastic surgery to help himself avoid the police. His second prison break saw him free as a bird for only 2 years, and he is now safely back behind bars. But for how long? After all, Yoshi Shiratori before him managed more than 2 escapes. On that note, ready to find out how Yoshi escaped from a triple max slam a 4th time? The staff of Sapporo prison made 2 major errors. 1. They had put so much work into making sure he couldn't slip through the vent in the ceiling, they hadn't focused on the floor. 2. They were so confident they didn't bother to handcuff him. Undoing the bolts that tied together his cell's floor, he used the dog bowl he had been fed with to dig his way out. You've got to applaud the man's commitment. Which prison escape did you find the most impressive? And if you were locked up, would you accept it or try and find a way to wriggle to freedom? Let us know in the comments, and make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on our next video. Thanks for watching.